Oh, hey, I'm Joe Mack. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk to you guys about my top 5 books and series that I don't feel like are getting enough attention on the internet. Now, I wanted to set out and make a video like this, which I know is kind of popular, top 10s, top 5s, what have you, and purposefully exclude things like Project Hail Mary, Red Rising, and Sun Eater, because I know that it goes without saying in 2025, those are going to be some of your favorite books if you are reading sci-fi. So, one of the books, and the book that I'm going to start with, is something that I do see appear on some people's lists. I do feel like it's not on enough people's lists. So, this is kind of a it's not like a direct reaction video or anything, but this is in response to some lists that I see coming out and some videos that are going around on the internet. And so just to get it out of the way, and not because it doesn't deserve more or because it's lesser than any of the others, but because it does appear elsewhere, I do want to talk about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Hyperion is such an incredible entry into a series. Hyperion is written in a duology of duologies, if you will. It is split into 2 arcs. We have Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion, and then we have Endymion and the Rise of Endymion. Very aptly named. So each arc is contained within 2 books. Obviously, I'm sure you've caught on. Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion is 1 arc, and Endymion and the Rise of Endymion is the 2nd arc. I don't think that the Endymion books get enough attention. I feel like a lot of people tend to leave them out or communicate about them as if they are much lesser or not necessary when you read this series. I personally loved all 4. I'm the kind of person who, when I enjoy something, I want to consume and digest every piece of information in regards to it that I can. So knowing that there were other books out there and that they are canon and that they are written by the original author, I had to read them, and I'm very happy that I did. I think that the story is much more complete reading all 4 books. So I don't know if Hyperion is yet considered a classic in the sci-fi world, seeing as it was written around 1989, 1990. So for all you young kids out there, that was the 1900s, but it was the late 1900s. So I don't think, and I'm not the kind of person who makes that kind of decision. And I think if I was just talking to a friend, I might call it a classic sci-fi story. Like, not that, oh man, semantics, right? What I mean isn't that it's written in a classical sense, but that it is what I believe to be a core sci-fi book that everybody should read. Hyperion has, in book 1, does something fantastic for us as the reader. And what it does is it tells multiple different stories from the perspectives of each of its characters, and it uses that opportunity to tell those stories in different genres. Really, it is a sci-fi book, absolutely, but when each character tells you the story of their life, the genre changes and it becomes a Western or a mystery or an action novel. And I think that that is something that keeps the book very fresh and interesting. I think that it sets it apart from other books, especially for a book 1 where it doesn't spend so much time as a slow burn novel might building its entire world, but instead it takes the time to build each of those characters. Book 1 and book 2 are about these characters and the mecca that they make to Hyperion and across Hyperion, to the place where the Shrike lives, this time traveling, multi-genre bending experience that these books put you through really hook you. And when it does build on the world of Hyperion and not just delve into the characters' backgrounds, it hooks you so hard. It is written very well. And from there, there's a time jump to go to the second duology in Endymion and the Rise of Endymion. And those books are written in mostly a frame narrative. So it is a complete change in writing style. And that is something that can be appreciated because it doesn't allow you to get bored with or tired of the way that Dan Simmons writes these books. And it continues the story. It continues to build on the lore and everything else that you have learned about so far, but expand upon that so much in Endymion, and the way that it connects back to the original two novels and rewards the reader at remembering and paying attention to what was happening is something that really adds to the experience. So I know that it has appeared on other lists. I know that there are special editions of it out there, and it does get recognition, but I don't think it gets as much as it should. And so this is me saying and adding to the attention that I think it should get and putting it on my top 5, which is not a 1 through 5. It is just 5 asterisks and 5 books. And we started with Hyperion. So on to the next one. Next up, I want to talk about Altered Carbon by Richard Morgan. This book was fantastic. It is not too big. The pacing is done beautifully, and the world building is so intriguing. The way that Richard Morgan introduces cybernetics and goes over a consumeristic world in the future and how the rich and powerful have even more privilege than those at the bottom, and how they can utilize people indefinitely to their own ends is fantastic. And not only that, but it is just a detective story in a sci-fi setting. And I think that that was very enjoyable for me as well. It wasn't your classic gung-ho action or political intrigue kind of book in space. Obviously there's action, but well, not obviously. I don't know why I said it like that. Now, this is a book that also became a TV show on Netflix. It had 2 seasons, and I thought that both of them were very good. I really, really enjoyed season 1, which follows book 1 very closely. And admittedly, this is the first book in a trilogy, and I have not read book 2 or book 3. So I can only speak to book 1, but I felt like book 1 was fantastic. I would highly recommend it for anybody to read. Like I said, the way that Richard Morgan is able to build this world and the pacing of the book is just top notch. So if you are looking for something to read, I think it's important for me to point out that because of the world that Richard Morgan built inside Altered Carbon, is each book, even though connected with the same character, is in and of itself self-servicing as a standalone novel. The way that he describes people being uploaded to a data center and then being downloaded to new bodies allows each portion of the story to be self-contained. So I wasn't left with any questions about the story of Altered Carbon at the end of the book. There are some questions to be answered about Takashi Kovacs and what his story or his past might entail or lead to. But as far as the plot of Altered Carbon, it starts and ends within this book. And if you are looking for something that is exciting and is a little bit different in the sci-fi genre, being a mystery, I highly recommend reading Altered Carbon. Next up, I want to talk about one of the pillars of science fiction writing, and that is author Philip K. Dick and the short stories, novellas, and everything that he's written. Really, I think should be consumed by anybody who enjoys sci-fi. This particular collection that I'm displaying here contains 4 novels of the 1960s, as it is so titled, and that includes The Man in the High Castle, The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and Ubik. Now, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, a lot of you might know because it is the basis for Blade Runner. The Man in the High Castle also became a show on Amazon Prime Video. You might have checked that out. Maybe, maybe not. Ubik is also absolutely required reading if you like sci-fi. And this isn't all that Philip K. Dick has written. For there are 2 more collection series that you can check out. We have 5 novels of the 1960s and 70s, which include Martian Timeslip, Dr. Blood Money, Now Wait for Last Year, Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, and A Scanner Darkly, as well as Valis and later novels, which are A Maze of Death, Valis, The Divine Invasion, and The Transmigration of Timothy Archer. Philip K. Dick is a pillar of the sci-fi author community. He paved the way and came up with some incredible ideas that are utilized and are paid homage to and are taken inspiration from in modern day sci-fi stories that we read today. I think that they are stories that everybody should read. They are enjoyable to read. This isn't like schoolwork or something where you read it because someone told you have to, being me right now, but because they are good, and there's a reason they're good. There's a reason his name is known. And even though some of these pieces are on the shorter side, they still deliver an impact, build a world, make you care about the characters, and accomplish every portion of a story that needs to be accomplished just in less pages. And I think that, especially if maybe you are burnt out or you are in a reading slump, something that doesn't take as much of your time and gives you that sense of accomplishment can also be something that is a good reason to make this worth reading. But Philip K. Dick, an incredible author, I highly, highly, highly implore you to read anything, and if possible, everything written by him. Next up, we have an incredible sci-fi author, Neal Stephenson. And my personal favorite book that he's written is Fall, or Dodge in Hell. Now, it came to a big surprise to me after I had read this novel, so I'll let you know now before you get into it that it is actually a sequel. It is the sequel to Remade.
What an idiot.
And I read this book without even knowing that Remade existed, and I was not lost. So I want to let you know that you don't have to read what I guess I'll call book 1 before reading this book. I think that it serves as a standalone novel. It gives a little more background information on Dodge, at least, and some of the characters contained within, but it is not required reading in order to enjoy this book. This book, I think, especially in 2025, has some knowledge of where things were going to go. And it was written and published in the year 2019, so not very long ago, and deals with some of the downsides to the internet and social media especially. And it kind of calls out and predicts something that I think will come to pass, and that is the amount of misinformation that is available on the internet and our inability to discern what is true and what is false. You know, nowadays, depending on how you phrase your question, if you can find whatever answer you want on any particular topic. So this, in the beginning of the book, tackles misinformation, bots, and the unreliability of the internet and people's ability to fake who they are and say whatever they want and be a keyboard warrior. There's a little bit of a time jump. And from there, my goodness, it is about uploading the human consciousness, what that means. Do we really die? What that looks like after death, the way that those alive deal with it, how it could be monetized and turn into the next level of consumerism, how to allow your average Joe the opportunity to take part in it besides just the hyper rich. And it goes so far as to explore different aspects of religion and how that could come into play through something like this. And this book has stayed with me since I read it 6 years ago. And it's something I think about a lot. The way that Neal Stephenson is able to take a modern problem that exists today and develop that and piggyback it, leapfrog it into such a strange solution that doesn't feel so connected to the original problem in the beginning, and expand upon it within his world and the characters that he has in play, and then to connect it the way that he does back to religion and to show how history in that sense could repeat itself. And I'm doing my absolute best to not say anything specific so that it is up to you to guess or interpret which religion it might be or what might be happening, but every page is worth it. This book is my favorite of all of his works that I've read, and I've read 5, which I don't think is enough from Neal Stephenson, but he is an incredible author. I do not see him being talked about as much as he should be. Snow Crash is fantastic. Seven Eves is absolutely wonderful. Cryptonomicon. But if you had to pick one Neal Stephenson book, and you asked me, the book that I would recommend is Fall or Dodge in Hell. It is a chonky boy in comparison to some of the other things that I've talked about so far today. And exactly how chonky, it is 883 pages long in hardcover format. I don't know how that would translate to a paperback version of it, but I love this book. I think it needs to be talked about more. I don't want it to be left behind back in 2019. I think it's still relevant. I think that it is something that if you were to pick up today, you will still very much enjoy. So please check out Fall or Dodge in Hell by Neal Stephenson. Now, this last book, I'm sad to say, I do not own. So I cannot physically display it behind me, next to me, or hold it, or do anything like that. I was lent it. The book was lent to me by a friend when I had read it. And it remains to this day the best book in the universe that it is written in that I have ever read. I think that goes for both the way that it is written, the prose, the pacing, the structure, also the way that it perfectly connects all of the lore and everything that came before it and after it. And that book is Darth Plagueis the Wise by James Luceno. To me, Darth Plagueis is the de facto Star Wars book. It is not about your heroes. It is about the Sith. But it encapsulates the Star Wars mythos and the Star Wars world so well that if you told me I get one Star Wars book, or I had to tell anybody to read only one Star Wars book, what would it be? It would be Darth Plagueis. And I think that even in that phrasing, there is something so enjoyable about being a Star Wars fan and being able to say that. Because in episode 3, we all know that Palpatine looks at Anakin and he asks him,
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
No.
or for that to become such a wonderful book, and to allow each and every one of us in the fandom, if you had read it, and if you're of the same opinion as me, because this is all subjective, to be able to act that out, but in a real sense, but to be able to look at you guys now and say, have you heard of the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise? And to know that it is worth reading, and it is written so well, it is so interesting to see, to A, learn about Darth Plagueis the Wise, and B, to find out about how Palpatine is developed, how Darth Maul is found and developed, and how late into the stories that were told through the films these characters are relevant and we didn't know. James Luceno, I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly, his last name, but James knocked it out of this park. And this book, unfortunately, is now part of the Star Wars Legends series, so it is not officially canon after Disney took over, but it is to me. And if you had to read one Star, not if you had to, but if you wanted to explore or delve into Star Wars novels, this is the book that I would say to check out. So those are my top 5 books and series that I think need to get more attention on the internet and that you guys should check out. If there's anything that I missed, or if you disagree with anything that I said, get in those comments. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if there's something I didn't mention that I should have. Let me know what your favorite book or series is that isn't getting enough attention, that deserves to have more. Love you. Bye.
What an idiot.